Hello and welcome to the Anime Movie Podcast with your hosts. I'm Kat.
I'm Joe.
And today we are reviewing Lu Over the Wall.
What year did it come out, Kat? It's a 2017 film by Masaaki Yuasa, who also did The Night is Short, Walk On Girl, which we've reviewed in the past, which
Infamously.
Yeah, which I gave a perfect score to. I think that might have been the first.
First 11.
Yeah. The first one, and we watched it subtitled too, so that's high praise right there.
That is high praise.
Because your boy usually doesn't like subtitles. Luckily, we didn't have to do subtitles for Lu Over the Wall. They had an English thing for it on Netflix.
Sometimes known as a dub.
Sorry, there's a haunting wind blowing through. It
just got really icy in the room.
It's a cold shoulder wind. Yes, otherwise known as a dub, which we watched for Lu Over the Wall via Netflix. You know what was interesting is this came out the same year as The Night is Short, Walk On Girl.
In the US or in Japan?
I don't fucking know. Looked it on IMDb and it says 2017 for both of them. Stop with your questions.
God. Maybe I should look into that myself.
Interesting. In the US or in Japan? I don't fucking know. I don't do that much research. You're lucky I got the fucking director's name right.
Because often it'll come out earlier in Japan.
Yeah.
Obviously, for older films, sometimes it's like, 5 or 6 years earlier. But, and for more recent films, it tends to be about a year apart. But there's a chance that there was some kind of a delay where they were made in separate years, but it wasn't distributed until a certain time, or it made, festival circuits and things before it actually sort of hit theaters. And so there can be some discrepancy in what year it actually came out.
Yeah, you're right. Just based off of like looking it up on IMDb, Wikipedia and stuff, it says 2017. So that's what I'm going with. This director has a very, very unique animation style.
Yeah.
Which carries over from The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. And I think some points in this movie is enhanced a lot more. Like there's some crazy stuff going on in this. There's some very beautiful and abstract things going on. It's definitely a very visually interesting movie.
Yeah, I think the animation style is really, really emotive,
Mm-hmm.
and it really fits what's going on at the time. And there's times that are silly where it gets very Looney Tunes-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Even the movement is very similar to Looney Tunes kind of cartoon moments. And then you also get these sort of like color block abstractions that move very differently, very different stylistically from everything else. And you get these beautiful transitions between the two styles.
Yeah, I was going to mention the transitions. Like the transitions in this are phenomenal at certain points.
Yeah.
It's just like so unique. And that's what I loved the story of The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. I just thought it was like so fun and so funny. But I think that the animation in this is better than in Night is Short, Walk On Girl, and more interesting and more unique, and just like at certain points very fluid, but then at other points kind of choppy. But like those transition, specifically, there's one, and we actually rewound to watch it again because I missed it the first time, and Kat was like, "You have to see this," so we did, and I was like, "Whoa, that's fucking really."
It was worth it. It was worth.
It was
the
totally
rewind.
worth it. It was so cool. But yeah, the story is a little bit controversial, according to the research that I've done.
Oh.
It's a mermaid story. We have a little spoiler-free synopsis here for you. We're not in the spoiler zone. But it's about our main character, who is named Kaiashimoto. He is kind of an adrift student who doesn't really know what he wants out of life, but he plays music, and he's just kind of like just going through life, going through the motions. And his parents or his dad is at least a little disappointed and like wants him to figure out what's going on. And his friends want him to like join their band. And through his music playing, though, he gets into contact with a mermaid named Lou, who is attracted to the type of music that he's playing and the type of music that his band is playing. And then, a lot of stuff happens. And I don't know how much we can say.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to add to that is that there is talk in the town about legends where you should be afraid of merfolk, and some people don't believe them, and it's sort of like the older people are like, no, I've seen it in the past. They eat humans.
Yeah.
You need to not go past the wall that kind of blocks in this bay because they're out there. And, remember, don't go out there at night because they hate the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So, it kind of sounds more and more like kind of demon creatures.
Yeah.
Is the idea you're getting. And then you meet Lou, and Lou is like a ponyo, like adorable kind of mermaid character.
Well, it's interesting because the original script of this movie was that Lou was going to be a vampire. And then as he was writing it, Yuasa was kind of like, this is too dark and I want something to be more fun. So he turned it into a mermaid. And then as he kept going on to the script, by the time he got to a big event that happens later on in the film, he was like, oh shit, this is really similar to Ponyo. And then he was like, nah, fuck it. I'll just say that I was influenced by Ponyo.
Which is fair.
Yeah, I mean, and there was a quote by him saying, "Is like, hey, if people are going to put me in the same, I guess, kind of sentence as Ponyo, I'm happy with that because I love that movie."
Yeah. And another movie that Joe Welke gave an 11 to.
Yeah. Will he give Lou Over the Wall
we'll
an
just
11?
Have to see.
You'll have to stick around for the entire podcast.
I do think that there is a lot of Ghibli in this, a lot of Miyazaki. I think if this was a Ghibli film, that this would have blown up.
Yeah.
Although the popular critique would be, well, this is kind of like a sequel to Ponyo. Why wasn't it just a sequel to Ponyo? Because it kind of feels like maybe one of Ponyo's sisters went off and had her own adventure later, meeting a boy.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like it could have been a perfect sequel to Ponyo. There's a few characters in here that have like big Totoro energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some of these themes and focusing on kids is very Ghibli to me.
Yeah.
This film looks a lot at how people follow their dreams or not, and about, sort of falling back into that 9-to-5 or that practical career and when to do that. And, there's a lot of like big industry versus like the town folk. And I feel like this very easily could have gone into an environmental place, but it kind of stays away from that. But you do still see these very, very common themes that you see in a lot of children's movies that have to do with like the grown-ups are afraid or want to make money off of something or kill something or destroy something, and the kids are like, no, it's good. You shouldn't.
That's my friend. Don't make money off my friend.
Yeah, and you shouldn't exploit it, and this is cruel, and it makes you just like hate them.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the critiques of this movie that I've seen come up a couple of times was that a lot of people felt that the story was very paint by numbers, and that the villains in this movie have paint by numbers motives, and the heroes have very paint by numbers solutions to it. It's a very like one of the critiques was like, yeah, it was visually interesting, but I was bored with the story, and I wish that they had done something different with the story. But I feel like this is a lot more of a children's movie, and children's movies, I feel like, can't get too complex because it's for kids. Like their minds aren't at that point yet to like really get heady concepts. So I just don't know what they would have wanted more out of the story.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that it is somewhat formulaic, and it didn't bother me. I still think it did well. I think that, it still had it paid off most of its setups.
Mm-hmm.
And there were only a couple of things where I was like, well, that came slightly out of nowhere. And everything else I thought was well thought out. And I cared about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I felt for them. And, you know, in these moments where something bad happened, I was like, no, make it better, fix it. And so to me, that's the mark of a good story. And, you know, most Hollywood films that, you know, you and I would have grown up with would have had fairly formulaic storylines. There's something very familiar about this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it was done in a new light, and with the stylistic stuff, with the music being pretty great for this film.
Music plays a big part in this film too.
Yeah.
And if music's going to play a huge role in a movie in terms of the storyline, it's got to be good music.
Yeah.
And the music is good in this.
And I think the music kind of follows the animation style, in which you have this kind of standard sort of orchestral, cinematic, you know, general music that would happen in certain scenes. And then you have these much like quirkier and fun and, you know, yes, a high schooler might have written this, or this might have been written 40 years ago and somebody played it on a ukulele sort of moments. And so it's nice that both of those reflect this moving between more abstract and fun and quirky and standard sort of formula.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I thought that the music was really good, and it fit the movie, and it fit the vibe of what was happening in the movie a lot of times. I think they did a great job with it. You know, I got a little like kind of emotional at a certain point in the movie, and I was like, oh, that's so sweet. There are certain things that go on in the movie that it's like, oh, that's so very, it's like bittersweet, but then there's also like other sweet things. And yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, I enjoyed it. I'm pretty amped to talk about it. I don't know what else to say. We talked animation, we talked soundtrack. What else we did the synopsis. Is it spoiler time?
It's spoiler time. We covered our non-spoiler bases.
Hell yeah.
We've earned this.
Yeah.
They wouldn't spoil this, right?
Oh,
They
God,
can't spoil this.
spoilers,
Right?
don't
spoil
spoil
this.
Spoiler talk, anime movie podcast, spoiler talk.
Okay, now we're spoiling stuff.
I kind of want to talk briefly about the different people in this movie who kind of had a dream that failed, and kind of explore those for a second, because it comes up so much.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the adults, and I mean, a lot of adults in real life will tell you like, hey, you know, yeah, you can quote unquote follow your dream, but make sure you get like a 9 to 5 or whatever as well. Make sure that you have that safety net. But as I believe it was Roseanne Barr, interestingly enough, she said, you can't have a safety net, because if you have a safety net, you're going to fall in it. So you need to go for your fucking dream whole ass. I believe it was Ron Swanson that said, don't do anything half-ass, whole ass it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
Yeah.
So we have Asaki, who is the person doing all of the announcements that go over the town. And what's nice about the way she's introduced, it's like, oh, did you hear she's back in town? Like, her modeling career failed in Tokyo, and she's back.
Yeah.
And there's like this little bit of shock. It's like, oh, now she's just doing the announcements. And later you find out she's like, I enjoy doing the announcements. And I think that, you know, it seems to come up like, oh, they brought her in thematically because we're going to keep hearing about these people who've like kind of come back to this small town. But instead, of course, the loudspeaker later becomes, you know, paid off, and that's actually a setup. And again, I like when they double barrel things, when it's like, oh, we're setting up a payoff for later, and also we're, you know, showing a character that works towards some of these themes that we're going to talk about. You have the guy who comes in, it's like a career day or something, and he comes in and just
He's basically like, just quit your dreams.
But he was going to be a dancer or something.
Yeah, something weird.
I can't
like
remember
that.
what it was. But and then we hear about how our main character Kai's mom went over to Tokyo to pursue dancing, or to to sort of pursue her dream, and left the small town, left the family, left the dad, who's all about do your studies, stop thinking so much about music. And that's actually told to us by the guy who failed his dancing career or whatever. He's like, oh, Kaiashimoto, like your mom, blah, blah, blah. But there's something really lovely that guy says, which is basically like, you really need to go out there and do it. You need to try.
Yeah.
Because you need to live your life in a way that you'll never regret not having gone for it.
Well, also Kaiashimoto, his dad was in a band and he gave up that dream too. And he's just kind of in the small town, and his wife left him. So, she was there chasing her dream. And like, I guess that he just started to think more practically. And she was like, I'm just really making up a storyline right now. But I could see her being like, you're not the same guy that I was chasing dreams with, Bill Burr, actually, here's another comedian quote. He had a quote that I thought was like super powerful. And it was something like, some listener wrote into his podcast and asked him like, hey, I'm trying to do comedy and I want to pursue it, but I'm afraid like it's really risky and like I would have to give up a lot. And like, what is your advice to that? And he was like, there's no risk in chasing your dream at all. He was like, there's a lot of risk in getting a safe 9-to-5, because then you might regret the rest of your life that you never went to chase that dream. And I think that's like such a great quote. And it comes from such a weird source. Like, you would never expect Bill Burr, like the angry fucking screamy guy, to be like this source of such a powerful, I guess, piece of inspiration. But I really love that quote. It's like super dope.
And there's something really similar in the film, which is, Kai can't swim very well. They have this kind of long distance swim, and Lou appears and grabs onto his life jacket and makes him go incredibly fast. But, he's wearing a life jacket. And then when he's in the water with her, he starts sinking. He's like, I can't swim. And, his life jacket gets taken off by her and the mer dog, which we should, come back to. We'll get to. But he's panicking, and she's like, just float. And he's like, I can't. And she's like, no, just float. And she's trying to show, if you're on your back and you chill, like you can float. And then he tries it and he has a moment and he's like, oh my God, I'm floating. And then he goes, but I can't float. I always sink.
Yeah.
And then he starts, sinking again. And then he grabs onto the boat, and then he's like, wait, as soon as I thought I couldn't, I went under. And so then he has this moment where he's like, I'm going to believe I can float. And then he does. And I think that that's kind of similar to the idea of like, if you keep that 9-to-5, then you're telling yourself you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same thing as that. Like, if you have a safety net, you're going to fall into it because it's just like too comfy. Like, chasing your dream is uncomfortable and it sucks, but you gotta fucking do it sometimes, And also what I liked about that part where he was floating is like, his imagination of himself floating is animated very differently from the actual movie. And it shows like, oh, this is what faith in myself looks like. And it's peaceful and a lot simpler. And like, just Lou is just saying like, just float. And he's like, he's overcomplicating things. He's like, no, I can't. And she even says something like, stop fighting it. Yeah. Like, just do it.
Yeah.
Which, is sometimes good advice, but if you're about to drown, definitely fight drowning. But, yeah. And then when he gets to the boat, he reimagines himself floating. He's like, wait, I was just doing that. I had faith in myself and I was able to do it. And then when I lost faith in myself, I wasn't able to do it. So I'm going to go and have fucking faith in myself. And then they just start chilling, floating. Him, Lou, and the mer dog. Sauron or something. I was like, Sauron?
Sauron? The Great Eye? His character arc, Kaiashimoto, is kind of unusual. It kind of goes in fits and starts. it'll seem like it's kind of going somewhere, and he'll draw back in, and it'll seem like it's going somewhere, and he'll draw back in. You know, I think that usually the character arc kind of like, you know, comes on slowly, and you start to kind of see them change, and maybe at the bottom of the second act, they'll have kind of a regression. And then, you know, for the third act, they come back, realize that they've learned, and then kind of save the day with that new character and new information. But his is like a roller coaster, just like going up and down and up and down and up and down. And I think that some of the other characters kind of have like these sudden sharp like 180s where they're suddenly like, actually, I'm going to help you save the day. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Where did this change of heart come from? I like it.
You were just like evil 2 seconds ago.
Weren't you part of the evil committee?
The evil committee.
The evil business committee?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the worst offender of that is really Yuho in this movie, where her like motives go very strange. Like she has the opportunity to vastly change how this movie goes, and she like keeps her mouth shut until the very last second, and then it's already too late. It's like, so Yuho and Ashimoto and Kunio form a band, and they're playing at this festival, which is like a big deal, and they have Lou playing, and then everyone discovers the existence of these mermaids, because it's just kind of been like folklore recently, but people all kind of actually believe in it, and they know that like mermaids are real, or there's I guess tales of them being real.
Yeah, it's the older people that have you know, actually have the genuine fear, and tell the younger people like, no, it's not just folklore, like it's true, which kind of makes sense. You have that, so those sorts of situations where you're like, oh yeah, they're old, they believe in that folklore sort of stuff. But I kind of like that they played on that this is actually, you know, they did see some things firsthand, but of course misunderstood what they saw.
Yeah. And so they're playing at this festival, and Lou shows up, and she's dancing and singing and stuff. And people are like, oh, holy shit, that's a fucking mermaid. They are supposed to eat people, but this one's just dancing. And everybody's dancing. That fucking scene's wild. Everybody loves that. So then the evil McMoneybags shows up, and he's like, we gotta get this mermaid and make her an attraction at my theme park, Merfolk Land. And so they kind of do that, and it's all like not natural, and everything's fake, and the Yuho and Kunio aren't even playing the music. It's like there's actual session musicians that are there that they hired, and they're in disguise as Yuho and Kunio, and very poor disguises. Like the person that's supposed to be playing Yuho is a big burly man with a goatee.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty funny.
There's a whole stand of Lou merch that goes on forever.
Yeah. And so then they basically they shine lights on Lou, who has an aversion to light, like all mermaids do. And so she freaks out, and she kind of like makes everything watery and tries to escape. And then like, how did they get to the point where they capture her?
At this point, she's escaping. Like she's escaping this whole situation, because she turns around and she is, you know, trying to make googly eyes at Kai while he plays the piano. And he lifts his head, and he was wearing some kind of mer animal hat, and realizes, oh, that's not him. And then she turns and sees the massive man with the goatee, and is like, that's not Yuho. So she realizes that suddenly she's like, oh my God, I'm in this situation where I don't know where I am or who all these people are. So she has sudden massive social anxiety.
Yeah.
And so she makes an escape, and then Yuho has like this kind of crisis where she's like, this was all fake. My dad said that, you know, we were going to have this gig, and he didn't let me actually play. He obviously didn't believe in me. And then she decides to run away. and wants the attention, and was jealous of Lou. And then Lou comes up to where she would usually meet Kai, and she gets caught in a net and they take her away. Now, what's confusing is, why did they know that she would show up there
Yeah.
at that exact spot in their little like boat garage?
Yeah.
You know, it would have been nice to have some kind of a scene that, you know, would have been like Yuho telling her dad, like, oh, Kai always meets her like here, and, you know, has some kind of a little rant.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Yuho frequently has this character that's very much sort of a flippant, moody, mood-swinging teenage girl thing, whereas she'll be like, you should apologize for that thing. That was really mean. And then she'll be like, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
You know, so I think she does have these sudden 180s, and it almost motivates her like running away and wanting the attention and being shitty in the ways that she is. I don't know that she ever fully redeems herself, because I found her so irritating.
Yeah. And part of her running away, she throws her phone into the ocean, and people use that to deduce like the mermaid people kidnapped her. We were right all along. Mermaids are evil. They probably killed Yuho. And her father is like, that once they capture Lou, they put her in a cage, and her father is like, where's my baby girl? You kidnapped Yuho. And Lou is trying to explain, like, no, Yuho's my friend. I wouldn't eat her. And Kai's my friend. And Kunyo's my friend. We're all friends. Everybody's friends. He's like, shut the fuck up. I did not want to hear any of that.
Her dad loses it.
Yeah. Like, you ask Lou a question. It's like, where's my daughter? And she's like, I don't fucking know. We're friends. And he's like, kill her. It's like, Jesus, dude.
Yeah, it is a lot
And
like that.
meanwhile, Yuho is seeing all of this happen and does nothing.
I was writhing in my seat.
Does nothing. Like, she could like save fucking Lou like so quickly. She already sees that they like caught her and they're imprisoning her and like basically going to torture her. And she's just like, let's see how this plays out. And her dad's screaming at Lou. And then he's just like, all right, open up the roof, which Yuho knows will damage the mermaid people. And then she, like, the roof is opening, and Yuho's like, I'm going to wait this out. I'm going to wait
Right?
this out. Until the light is literally in Lou's cage. And then she's like, stop. She didn't do anything. It's like, do this 3 minutes ago.
I mean, and I think this is, you know, a way to build up suspense and to motivate Lou screaming to get the attention of her pops.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, is like this Charlie Chaplin, but as a shark, but kind of a walrus.
Yeah. Giant, like, weird shark whale man.
But also Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah. He's got a suit on and like a little bowler hat. It's very cute.
Anyway, back to Lou in this cage.
Back to the peril at hand.
Yeah. So that he sort of streaks across the city in flames because of the light to come and save his daughter. But I think that it's a really lazy way to create suspense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, I mean, it's kind of motivated sometimes in horror films where somebody, you know, can't get to grips with their keys and can't open their door, and it's because their hands are shaking so badly and because they're so scared. And you're still like, just open the door.
Yeah.
But here it's just like, she's just standing and watching this, and she really still hasn't figured out that Lou's in danger and that she can do something about it.
Yeah. And then even once she reveals herself to be like, I'm fine, the dad's like, the mermaids didn't capture you? And she's like, no, they didn't do anything to me. The dad's still like, nah, fuck it, still torture Lou. It's like,
Yeah, I at that point I was like, why didn't that help the situation? Why hasn't this de-escalated?
yeah. But then also at the same point, like, now the flaming giant whale shark man
Yeah,
is already on his way, which was pretty terrifying.
that was really scary.
Could
yeah.
you imagine seeing that just bursting through fucking Los Angeles. That'd be so insane.
And the sort of, camera movements, quote unquote camera movements, they were kind of showing as part of the animation and the way he was moving, it was genuinely scary.
Yeah. He looked scary. Like he was a charred, like all black because he's like being burned alive by the sun in flames, burning parts of the town down.
And the way he was crawling was just super, super creepy. Like it almost became like spider-like, just with like the limbs moving so quickly. And this gave me like really big Princess Mononoke vibes because it reminded me of the way, as I called them, the danger noodles, but the sort of, sign of the
Ashitaka's curse or whatever.
Yeah, the sign of Ashitaka's curse, the sort of demonic, sort of take over all of those sort of tentacles and the way it was going around the bodies of the different gods that were dying. It reminded me a lot of that. The flames were kind of like licking around the eyes and around the face in some of the close-ups. And it reminded me a lot of the Mononoke close-ups.
And as scary as it was to see him just like barreling through this town on fire, the motivation behind it is like the most precious, sweet thing. Like he heard his daughter screaming and he's like, I gotta save her. And then once he gets to her, he sacrifices himself basically to block the sunlight from touching her. And it was just like, wow.
That was really touching.
That was beautiful.
And he was such a goofy, weird addition to the film. Like before that, like very entertaining, but the scenes weren't really seeming to add much to the rest of the film. It was just kind of like, here's a moment to like watch this like funny thing. But it was very, like well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was the character that you were like, oh, this is very Totoro-y.
Yeah, he had
big
some
magical dude.
Yeah, he had some big Totoro energy just because he was just like goofy and weird, but seemed kind of godlike. And there was even a moment where he opens up his mouth and kind of does this, not a roar, but like this big sound. And it was so much like when Totoro opens up his mouth and makes like a big noise. Mm-hmm. But, you have this moment where it just seems like, oh yeah, if you were approached by this thing that's like the size of a house, this Charlie Chaplin shark walrus, the size of a house, that would be terrifying. But instead he has this like funny, goofy presence and always stands up really straight, which also kind of reminded me of Totoro as well.
Yeah, and like our introduction to him is he's helping these fishermen with their fish, but he's actually turning the fish into merfish.
Yeah, that was confusing because I was like, wait, hold on, are they merfish? Are we merfishing this?
Yeah,
which means that it just turns the fish into half fish, half some other kind of fish.
Yeah, I didn't
or
really...
like half octopus, or
like the only thing that really happens with those fish too is like after they're killed and eaten, they're still alive, which was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And then everybody gets kind of pissed off about it and they're like, what the fuck is going on here?
But the ones that weren't put on ice immediately did turn into like half octopus or half squid.
Yeah.
Or
I think my favorite scene with the father was when he's walking through the town. He has to stay in the shade because sunlight will like burn him alive. And he gets to this intersection where, there's a gap between buildings and there's just sunlight. And he just stands there and waits for the sun to go down or the shade to make it, the shade to bridge that gap.
And they do that in a time lapse.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes with the music at the same time as well.
Yeah. And then he just crosses the street and I was like, that's so fucking funny.
Yeah. It's really, really entertaining.
It was very goofy. And I don't know. I really liked him in his suit. And yeah, man. I mean, there's so much to like about this movie.
Yeah. And I don't really know what motivates the merfolk getting so involved in this town after not being involved for so long. I guess, I understand they motivate Lou showing up because the fact that Yuho and Kunyo's band that invite Kai to starts playing and practicing in the abandoned Merfolk Land theme park on Merfolk Island. And so that gets her attention. But I don't really understand why her dad shows up in a business suit.
Yeah, I
and
didn't
just
understand.
starts kind of wandering around the town. It was super entertaining.
Yeah.
But I don't fully get the motivation behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, well, actually, the fishermen were playing music by the sea, I guess.
But is that the first time?
That's what I was about to say. Like,
Yeah.
they're playing music, but I was like, is this like Footloose, but like only music is outlawed in this town?
Then again, the dad seems prepared to get on land, considering that he has holes in his shoes,
That is
like
true.
the side of a boat, to let out water.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then
I
again,
don't
he
know.
could only wear the shoes when music was playing, because that's the only time when his like double fins would become feet.
Look.
Look, you can't ask too many questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we
It's a
start
mermaid
asking
vampire movie.
if we start asking questions about this movie, we're fucked.
Yeah, I mean,
It's going to get down to a 0 out of 11.
I did enjoy this like cross between mermaid and vampire. Since they couldn't touch the light, they were only around during the nighttime, and when they bite something, it becomes a mer thing.
Yes, which we weren't privy to until Lou gets to a dog
An animal shelter.
And Kai has explained to Lou, like, hey, yeah, that's the dog animal shelter. That's when dogs don't have owners or no one wants them. That's where they hang out. And she's like, cool. She goes to the animal shelter and just bites all of the dogs and turns them into mer dogs. And then she's like, now they have a home. It's just like,
Which is the
what
sea.
the fuck is going on? It was adorable. The mer dogs were unbelievably cute.
Yeah, mer dogs aren't something I knew I needed in my life,
I had no idea I needed them in my life.
but I needed that.
Yeah, as soon as I saw them, I was like, this is a win for everybody.
Everybody just got a W.
Yeah, the dogs now have a home, and I am looking at pleasant things.
And there's one dog that gets caught for a moment. This movie just has these moments where it almost gets super dark and upsetting. For example, when the dad, jumps in to save her and is going to sacrifice himself and burn alive to protect her. And then when this mer dog has fallen behind and starts getting burnt up by this beam of sunlight. And I was like, no, don't do it. Everything was so nice. and then like the dog gets saved and I was like, oh. And then that kind of becomes Lou's sort of mascot throughout the rest of the film, which is a really like sweet addition.
Yeah, that dog is kind of like a sidekick to Lou throughout the rest of it. And the dog helps on certain missions and is there dancing with them at some points too. And
I think, Lou is kind of the cute tax of this movie, but having a dog means she kind of has her own pet cute tax.
yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the dog was cuter than Lou.
I don't know. I think they're both adorable. So I think that they're the sort of like mutual cute tax for the film.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the dogs though.
Yeah.
Like I like dogs.
And I like how they kept bringing them back in, but it never got to be too much.
Yeah.
There's a moment at the end where Kai and Lou are dancing and they're on the water and you're like, how are they able to do that? And you look down and it's the dog's paws that are coming up out of the water occasionally to like give them something to stand on while they dance.
Yeah, it was so cool. So Masaaki Yuasa's later movie, Ride Your Wave, I think the dog shows up in that movie I read.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I've got it on DVD. I didn't know it was him.
I didn't either, but now I do.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yep.
That we've got another one of his films to look forward to.
Yeah.
It has to do with water again.
I think he really found his niche. He's just a water movie guy.
Water movie. Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess there's like a river. There's a canal in The Night is Short, Walk On, Girl.
I don't really remember too much of that movie aside from...
Remember when she has the
Dawn
drinking
Underwear.
contest on the big boat, on the canal boat?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Okay, we can move on. So Kai lives not only with his dad, but also his grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of like the moments that they have at the dinner table where his grandpa's like, stay away from the water, especially, at nighttime. And
Yeah, don't play music by the water.
yeah, don't play music by the water, which is kind of setting up this like, the water is dangerous. And then we have his dad who's like, you need to be focusing on your studies and you're not doing this enough. And you could see why he would be like, I'm not eating dinner anymore. I'm going up to my room.
Yeah.
I like to think that I've grown up since being a teenager, but if I had to sit at a table on a daily basis and get nagged by at least 2 people, I would not be able to handle that well. I would be triggered constantly.
Yeah, I'd be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's so amazing. Making umbrellas? Ooh.
And, they're telling him that he either needs to, make umbrellas or go into the fishing industry because that's what this town is, known for. And that's how they can make money. I can't remember where I was going with talking about the family at the house. Oh, yeah. I got kind of emotional when we kind of get the resolution for the grandfather's story and finding out why.
That's when I got emotional.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why don't you take this one?
So the grandfather is constantly warning Kai about, the dangers of the ocean and not to go near the ocean at night, not to play music by the ocean at night. And Kai is kind of curious about it, and he eventually confronts him about it and is like, so why are you constantly afraid of these mermaid people? Why are you afraid of the merfolk? Have you ever seen one? And the grandfather was like, yes, I have. When I was a boy, one of the merfolk killed and ate my mother. And so I don't want that to ever happen to anybody else that I love in my life anymore. And so follow my orders and don't do that. And then we get kind of a flashback, which is the most beautifully animated part of this movie, I feel like.
Yeah.
So we get a flashback and we see what happens to his grandfather's mother. And it's basically like she was deep sea diving or scuba diving, doing some kind of like exploring at the bottom of the ocean or whatever. And we don't see the full story. All we see is she gets spat back out up onto a boat, which is where his grandfather is. And then while she's on the boat, his grandfather notices she has a big tooth mark on her leg, like a big bite. And then she bursts into flames, and then she goes back into the ocean. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, the grandfather just doesn't understand. But it makes sense why he would think like, oh, mermaids are evil, they killed my mom.
And I thought that was super cleverly done.
Yeah.
And we're not shown the flashback until we've seen the merdogs happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we see that they start to flame in the sunlight, and we see that when Lou bites one of them, they become a mer person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really critical for the audience's understanding, and it's really critical for the audience's understanding about why the grandfather wouldn't understand. And
yeah,
it'd be very hard to explain. Like if I was a character in the movie and I knew all of this, it'd be hard to explain to the grandfather. Like, no, you see, when they bite,
have you considered the idea that perhaps
they're like mer vampires? So maybe give them a break. So yeah, later on in the movie, when the town is flooded and all of these mermaid people are helping out the townspeople to get them to safety, and yeah, the grandfather helps save some of the mer people, and in his efforts to save the mer people, he actually sees his mom in the water, and he's like, oh, holy fuck. And then we get the full story of what was going on. So while the mom was scuba diving or deep sea diving and checking out what was going on and like looking at ruins and sunken ships and stuff, one of the sunken ship's masts falls off and like traps her under the water.
yeah, it catches her clothes and traps it against a rock.
Yeah, so she's
Between a rock and a hard place, am I right? Thank you.
And so she's like panicking, and she's, about to drown because, humans, we can't breathe underwater for that
And that
long.
was scary. It was done in this like really abstract way,
Mhm.
but you could feel that panic
Yeah.
of being caught under the water.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the merfolk, sees this happening and goes and bites her on the leg to save her life, because if they didn't bite her, she would have died. She would have drowned.
Trying to pull her away
Yeah.
from the mast.
Yeah. So once she gets bitten, the merfolk person it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do now. So he puts it back up on the boat. Then that's the part that kind of didn't really make that much sense to me. Like, why would the mer person put her back up in the sunlight?
Well, the merfolk weren't trying to bite her. It was that they were trying to pull her out from to get her clothes out from the mast and the rock and try to pull her up to safety. So I don't think they were thinking about trying to turn her into a mermaid to save her.
Okay, that would make some sense too. But yeah, then they put her back up on the boat. The grandfather sees it. She bursts into flames, goes back into the water.
That would be terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. That would totally scar a kid and make him hate mer people. Sure.
And you might also think, like, maybe I made up that part.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, it's one of those things where you're like, did I really see what I thought I saw?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? But then we get the reuniting of the grandfather and his mother, and it's just like so beautiful.
And you kind of see him like starting to figure it out and start to rethink what he had seen that day, and he's like going and delivering a shit ton of umbrellas, you know, to protect the merfolk from the sun. And everything about that whole situation and the way he kind of turned around was so heartwarming. And yeah, I got emotional.
Yeah, and when he sees his mom, you can see him like start to cry, like, Mom? Fucking what? You've been here this whole time? And she's like, yeah, come and hug me. And then later on in the movie, we see that like he has quote unquote died. We have a picture of him next to his mother, but we all know that he's a mer person hanging out with his mom. And yeah, it's really sweet.
It is really, really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course we have the same thing that happens with, what do they call her? Old woman octopus or something.
Yeah. Well, hers was also very sweet too, but I wasn't like as attached to her.
No, of course not. Yeah. But it happens to her as well. With her husband.
Yeah. Her husband was about to drown or something, and a mer person saves him, and she's out trying to kill mer people because she hates them, because you're like, they stole my husband from me. And then he just shows up while she's on this like murderous rampage. He's like, hey, calm down. I'm here.
And why didn't he show up earlier? I guess she was staying away from the sea.
I guess.
Except she did seem to hang out near it with a harpoon.
Yeah. And then so she turns around. She's like, I don't know the guy's name, but she's like, Larry?
Oh, Larry. Isn't that what you call my dad?
Look, anybody whose name I don't know is Larry. Okay. So she's like, Larry? And he's like, yeah, I'm cool here. And then she's like, oh my God, I miss you so much. And he's like, I miss you too. And like, us mer people, we don't want to hurt you. Like, we're friendly. Like, we really we want to live in harmony with you. And she's like, oh, I guess I should put this enormous spear down. He's like, yeah, do that. And then he bites her. She becomes a mer person and goes, holy mackerel, which is a joke. The cat shit her pants all over.
Wow. Jesus. I wanted to acknowledge that it was a pun.
It was a fish joke.
And so I turned to Joe and I went, holy mackerel. Just like, let's acknowledge this pun. And he wouldn't react. So I went, holy mackerel. And then he still wouldn't react. So I said it a third time. And then your reaction was so annoyed to it that made me laugh really, really hard.
So yes,
not
mackerel, fish, I get it.
You were so annoyed about it, and that was very funny for me. I think there are a lot of little details in the animation as well that I really loved in the backgrounds and things that I just wanted to briefly mention. Like when they go to that courthouse or city hall or wherever they're kind of have the band of kids sitting in front of the committee of evil businessmen, there are, you can see on the windows that people have drawn with their fingers, like they do on the back of cars. Yeah, in the dust. And I thought that was so cute. It was such a little detail, and it kind of stays in the background. It never calls attention to it. I bet if you look more closely at it, there's probably some little things that you can see in it.
Yeah,
that might be important. But I think
I agree.
Oh,
sorry, I agree with you. I thought that was like such a nice unnecessary touch. Like, it was something that people would definitely do to like an abandoned building's windows, but like to animate it and make it so detailed, it was like, wow, you're really putting in that extra work.
And there were, cute little moments in the, sort of the backgrounds in general that were nice. I also liked the fact that they said that they would ward off the merfolk by having dried out sea urchin husks and then painting them white. And it kind of bugged me for a second because I was like, I feel like that should have gone further. There should have been more to that. It was mentioned that it's something that freaks him out. And then when Lou and Kai are first walking together and he's holding up the boombox that's playing music the whole time so that she can have her feet and they can walk around. And she has this moment where she's like, oh my God. And she's like terrified of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it never really comes up again.
Yeah.
But it is a nice little detail because that there'd be something in the little town like that where there'd be something with the folklore that something would be hanging up and you wouldn't know what it's for. And someone would tell you, oh, it's because there's folklore about mermaids. So they hang that to,
Do you know why they were terrified of that? The only thing that I can guess is because it kind of looked like the sun. Like they just painted those things white. So I don't know why the merfolk would be scared of it.
I think they said that's why they do it. At the beginning of the movie, they said they paint them white because it does kind of look like a sun and the rays of the sun.
Okay.
Although I would have painted them yellow personally.
Yeah, these fucking people don't know what the sun looks like.
Should have come to me. I can
Should have asked us, the Anime Movie
sun
Podcast.
Colors. I think the one thing we didn't mention that's kind of important story-wise is that at some point, Kai decides that he wants to look more into the folklore and read more into it. And he goes to, I think is it Kunio's dad or uncle? It seems like a relative.
I think it's Kunio's grandfather. The bald guy with no eyes,
but
enormous
biggest
eyebrows
I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, all of his hair went to his eyebrows.
He put on glasses and he seemed to just tuck it underneath the hair of his eyebrows to hold it up. He's a monk at this temple and has some information about the old folklore that he gives to Kai. And then he tells Kai the story of this place where the townspeople had taken a mermaid and had let her burn in the sun.
Yeah.
And ever since then, there's been this curse.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been very afraid of the curse. And at some point, they call it the merfolk's curse. At some point, they call it like the shadow stone curse. And this is what causes this horrific flood to happen just inside of the walls of the bay only, after they attack Lou. And the merfolk have no control over it. So
yeah, this part was kind of confusing for me.
So where does it, I mean, magic, I get it, but like, I don't get it.
Yeah, magic, I don't get it. Magic, I get it, but no, I don't.
That was a lie.
Yeah, that part did get kind of confusing for me. I understood the lore, and then by the time we got back to talking about it, I had forgotten about that plot line. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess there is a curse, but how does it work and why is it doing it and what?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
somehow turned the water green.
Yeah. I guess, like in Ponyo, you kind of get this thing where it almost seems like, Ponyo's dad is kind of evil. He kind of becomes a villain for a bit of it.
Yeah, David Bowie, Sea Wizard.
Yeah. And then he kind of realizes, she needs to follow her dreams and her heart. And so kind of lets Ponyo go and kind of goes like, oh, I'm actually being kind of a shitty dad. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to chill.
I'm going to let my, what looks like 4-year-old daughter make her own decisions.
Yeah. But like in this one, the merfolk don't seem to have a lot of agency. They don't seem to be, it's not like her dad is, playing that sort of evil character and like it would, but, I think that in some formulaic films, what would have happened is that the dad of Lou would have kind of waged a war against the humans because of
them torturing her.
So then these two dads are kind of like fighting against each other. And then there has to be some kind of a Disney realization that you're both fighting for the same thing, which is to lead happy, healthy lives and for your children to be protected and so on and so forth. You have so much in common. So let's put down our mer
They have
swords.
so much in common. They should probably fuck.
What?
The whale man and the
wrong with you?
Yuho's dad. They should get it on. Anime hentai podcast. No, yeah, that is what would happen in like a Disney movie. You know, it's everyone has kind of people's best intentions in mind, but in their minds, you know, they say that the sign of a good villain is the villain is the hero of their own story. So you could totally see why Yuho's dad thinks he's a hero and being like, you killed my daughter, we're gonna fucking reprimand you. And then like the shark dad, you know, he's a hero and he's like trying to save his daughter, but he rampaged through a town on fire.
Yeah. You know, and I know that you mentioned earlier that with Yuho's dad, I think maybe I mentioned it too, about how he doesn't cool down. That it's not like, oh, my daughter is safe, so now everything's okay. So, you know, false alarm, guys, everybody go home.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of a lot of people who kind of have this big ego, that it's very hard for them to stop that snowball going down the hill, gaining momentum, even if they kind of find out, oh, never mind, false alarm, it was okay. And it's like, nope, my adrenaline is still at this level, so it doesn't matter. Even if, you know, what you say is true, I'm still all the way up here.
Yeah.
So I was like, and I kind of like that because there are a lot of very unreasonable people who would react like that.
Yeah, I couldn't put it better myself. Like that was the perfect way to encapsulate that. Like just once you get that train rolling, it's hard to stop it and admit that you were wrong, or because then you look like an asshole. But now you also look like an asshole. Like no matter which track you go down, you look like an asshole.
But if you in the moment feel justified for how you're acting and feel like you can put the blame on something or somebody else, with him literally saying it's the merfolk's fault, it's all the merfolk's fault, you know, still. But yeah, I don't know that I buy the whole curse thing, just because it's not, I don't buy that it's like the merfolk have zero control over it, so this is just happening in this one place and it's like an automatic trigger. Again, it's this like, well, it's magic. But I think that there could have been more explored to kind of motivate it. All we had is that one setup of going to the monk and him saying, this stone, this thing happened. It's like, I would have liked to have seen more of that or hear more about it. Because it just felt like somebody was writing a script and went, how do I motivate this flood?
Well, it's also like if the older people of this town are knowledgeable about that curse and they're afraid of it, why would they basically recreate that thing to happen? Like the reason that the curse is there is because the townspeople took a mermaid out of the ocean and let her burn alive in sunlight. And then they're like, oh, but then that after we did that, it cursed the town. So let's do it again.
Right? Yeah.
What are you thinking? Like, I mean, I get it. You thought that your daughter was killed by them.
But also I don't.
But also at that point, your daughter's back, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of, everything surrounding the curse is a little dubious to me.
Yeah, totally.
That's one part of the storyline where it's kind of like, and it also didn't feel necessary at certain points. Like, we didn't even need that.
No, the whole town didn't really need to be in peril. But I do think that with Yuho getting onto the sort of town loudspeaker and kind of making sure that Lou got saved and, you know, the two of them, Kunio as well, like helping people, you know, get to safety or warning them of what's going on. I think that those are supposed to be these like big redemptive moments, and it's also supposed to be, you know, this like climactic moment. And it strongly reminded me of Your Name.
Yeah.
Because we had this, you know, group of 3 friends who are trying to protect this town, and they're breaking into a place to get onto the town loudspeaker to make these announcements. So like I liked how this film seemed to kind of have these little inspirations from a lot of other sort of big films that had this like nice sense of familiarity, and some of them I think were some nods. You know, I think there was a big nod to Ponyo.
Absolutely.
And then some other things, you know, I don't know that shark walrus Charlie Chaplin character was supposed to be anything like Totoro, but just really felt very Totoro like. But I kind of think we are moving towards our amp numbers, but is there anything else that really stood out to you, or any little moments?
Yeah, actually, I kind of wanted to ask you a question about this before we got to the cranking of the amps. So we've been talking about this for, you know, around an hour at this point, and we haven't really mentioned a lot about Ashimoto, who is the main guy character. Do you think that's the sign of like a bad or weak main character? Because I felt that he was kind of, you know, he's the driving force through the movie, and like this is how we get into the plot of him meeting Lou. But I feel like we didn't talk about him. I feel like there's so much more interesting stuff happening around him that I liked. That I was like, Ashimoto's kind of a weaker point of the movie.
I think for Kaiashimoto as a character, part of the problem is what I mentioned earlier about the way his character arc is developed or not developed, how it goes forward and then it goes back. He gains some confidence, he's able to float, it goes back. He seems to be pursuing this musical thing, and it has Lou there, and they have this great plan. And then after that, it's like he totally loses faith in himself, loses faith in the band, you know, and he doesn't sort of stand up for Lou to say like, this is so dangerous for her. You guys are going to potentially cause harm to her. Instead, he does this thing where he recedes and he goes into like his studying thing, and he goes away. And I think at that point, you know, you're not really interested in him anymore. You know, he's not going towards any of the goals or themes of the story. He's you know, derailed in a way that he's gone back to normal life. And, you know, we're not here for normal life.
Absolutely not.
And I think that goes towards some of the themes of the film where you kind of go, oh, he lost himself.
Yeah, he chased and gave up on like 3 different dreams in the movie.
Yeah. And I think that's going towards the thematics, and also makes this really unconventional as far as a film goes. So, you know, it kind of gives you a breather where you kind of go away from him and you're not really seeing his relationship with Lou develop. And, you know, in some ways I would have liked to have seen their, you know, relationship develop more. Although he probably should have explained to her that kissing isn't a friend thing. On the lips normally. There's plenty of people who are more comfortable with levels of intimacy.
Yeah, tell that to the Italian.
That's usually, you know, cheek kissing.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, I feel like that kind of makes him a bit weaker, just because like even when he does find himself at the end, like all of the stuff that he'd been pursuing up until that point, he's kind of given up on, it seems like. His big resolution at the end is like, I'm going to go to high school. And it's like, yeah, of course you are. You have to. It's illegal not to. Because at the beginning he's like, oh no, I don't think I'm going to go to high school. It seems like he's not really going to pursue the music thing. He's going to go to high school and like study business or whatever. And he's like, I want to come back and also learn how to sail a boat. But I am going to go say hi to mom in Tokyo. I feel like we're just kind of left with him still adrift with not any kind of clear goals. But he's like, I guess he's come out of his shell a bit more.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I think there's a bit there that's kind of like, I'm still lost, but I feel so much better.
Yeah.
It's this, I'm not giving up on myself. I now like do have these goals. I want to reconnect with this creative side, reconnect with my mom. I think that, where he comes out at is a lot better than where he started, but I do see where you're coming from as far as his character goes. And I think that you almost don't notice until it kind of gets to the end of the movie and you're like, hold on. Because, you're so invested in the grandfather's story and you're so invested in all these other stories that are coming up.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the side stories are more interesting than the main story. And
I think there'd be ways to kind of keep him involved throughout that might have helped a little bit. And maybe if he hadn't sort of given up and gone away the number of times that he does.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the movie, he's kind of like, I don't have anything figured out and everything sucks. And by the end of it, he's like, I don't have anything figured out and it's okay.
Although,
Okay.
he was actually so depressed, he literally didn't care about anything, even himself. He
Yeah.
didn't, he loved nothing. And
I
then,
love nothing.
exactly. And then, at the end, it's really sweet that he's like, Lou, I need to tell you, I care about you. I care about somebody. You've made me care.
Yeah, I guess.
But you're right. It could have been
If
stronger.
that's the growth,
there could have been more.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the growth of his character, like, I didn't care and now I care about things, like, what a general fucking coverall growth,
Listen, the number of people who would pay good money for the kind of therapy that would take you from I care about literally nothing to I care about somebody, I care about life, I care about everything. Good money.
Okay, well then fucking kudos to Lou, the best therapist out there. Alrighty, you want to crank our amps for Lou over the wall?
Yeah.
You do it first.
10.
That's what I was going with.
Look at us. We're getting weirdly consistent with
Yeah.
this. Yeah, I can't give it an 11 because there's just a couple of things that are a bit weird for me. There's a couple of 180s with characters that don't seem totally motivated, even if I liked what they were doing. Yuho's grandfather just suddenly helping with, free the fish, and also, free, the merfolk.
You mean Kai's grandfather with the umbrella?
No,
Yuho's grandfather.
Yuho's grandfather when they've put that giant bell thing on top of Lou and her dad.
Oh, the cowboy dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's suddenly like, I need to help you. And I was like,
Yeah,
why?
that was kinda
where what happened to merfolk land and put them in a cage and show them whatever? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And also, Kai's dad's change of heart was a little bit sudden. Although it was like maybe slightly more motivated. So at least you see him be like, Kai, wait, come back. You should play the festival and stuff. Like, are you sure you don't want to, play your music for that? You kind of see him starting to have a change of heart. But yeah, there's a couple other people where I'm just like, what just motivated that, to happen for that person? And I would have liked to have seen a little bit more about what that curse is. It seems like it was just a little bit lazy on that part. But everything else about this is so charming and so imaginative, and I really, really enjoyed it.
So I know that I said 10 out of 11 earlier, but I'm actually going to give it a 9, just because this doesn't, for me, it does not compare to The 90 Short Walk On Girl. I like that so much better than this. This movie is also quite long. It's almost 2 hours long.
It is a little bit long.
Yeah, I feel like some of it could have been chopped out. Like the mystery of that curse still, I mean, it makes no sense to me. And those are like the big sticking points for me. But otherwise, yeah, like you said, and I said earlier, like the animation's superb.
Yeah.
The
so
music's
good.
great. Like it's a fun enough story, but I just feel like I've seen cool animation done better, like in The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. I've seen the mermaid story done better in Ponyo. And I've seen the loudspeaker thing done better in Your Name. So
Didn't you say earlier that you thought the animation in this was better than in The Night is Short, Walk On Girl?
maybe, I'm a contradictory person. This is one of those 180s.
Rewind the tape.
This is one of those 180s that don't make sense. You know what? I probably did say that because like that flashback scene with the grandfather, and even when like it skips to Kai imagining himself and gaining confidence in himself, that animation was fun. So yeah, you know what? Maybe the animation in this is better. I don't know. I'm fucking going crazy about it. But yeah, I'm going 9-3. 9-3.
That was such a roller coaster for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. I like
9.3.
it. I liked it.
9.35?
9.375.
Get out.
For Lou Over the Wall, 9.375. Not quite a 9.4.
Not quite 9.4 from Joe Welke out of 11 for his AMP score tonight, and a 10 out of 11 from me.
This has been our episode on Lou Over the Wall, which is available to stream on Netflix. So I think it gets a recommendation from both of us.
It absolutely
So
does.
I would definitely go check that out. And check us out on YouTube at the Anime Movie Podcast. Just search it. We post whole episodes of podcasts, some video podcasts, clips from the podcast that are animated and all kinds of good stuff. Sometimes there's some YouTube exclusive stuff. Not too often. But sometimes you can reach out at the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at the Anime Movie Podcast. And yeah, drop a line. Oh, give us a fucking review on Apple Podcasts. We only
Like
have,
he just remembered that. you
yeah,
didn't,
we
like-
have so few reviews. Give us 5 stars, damn it. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Spotify doesn't mean shit.
I mean, you always do the plugs every single time, which thank you. You've gotten very good at it.
Now I'm
Not that
getting
you were-
aggressive at it.
Yeah, now you're getting a little aggressive at it, so we should probably chill that out. But how funny it would be if we like memorize the plugs and we said it together at the same time. Imagine if we could do it for the entire time.
That'd be so hard. I do it differently every time.
Yeah, but it would be really hard. Wouldn't it be odd?
That would be odd.
And we'd have to see if anybody actually listened to the very end of the episode, because you'd have to wait to see if we successfully managed to do the plugs at the same time.
Yeah, a little teaser for you. Maybe we'll do that
Yeah.
in the next one.
Yeah, next episode, we're going to practice for 7 days.
Fuck. What did I sign up for now? That's the end of this podcast.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Anime Movie Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at the Anime Movie Podcast, and you can reach out via email at the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.